Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic, the space where we talk about healing, faith, money, mindset, and the things we were never taught to name without leaving our culture out of the conversation. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, born and raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and also raised between Bani and El Cibao, proudly Dominican. And right now, I'm a candidate for my master's in finance because learning how money, direction, and stability actually work shouldn't feel intimidating, exclusive, or disconnected from real life. This episode is part of a longer series about money, direction, and the nervous system. But today's conversation sits in a very specific place in that arc. This is not an episode about deciding. It's not about pushing forward, and it's not about motivation. This episode is about what happens after you choose. Because here's what I've noticed, both in myself and in so many conversations with listeners. We talk a lot about clarity, intention, and choosing, but we don't talk enough about the moment after that. The moment where you finally say, okay, this is what I'm doing. And instead of relief, what shows up is discomfort. Instead of calm, what shows up is doubt. Instead of momentum, what shows up is resistance. And if you don't understand what's happening in that moment, it's really easy to turn it inward and think, maybe I'm choosing wrong, maybe I'm not ready, or maybe I should backtrack. This episode exists to slow that moment down. Because choosing a direction doesn't magically make life feel lighter. What it does is make life more honest. I have your first journal prompt here. When you think about a choice you've already made, what emotions came up after the decision, not before? Here is something we need to say clearly. Choosing a direction doesn't create resistance. It reveals what was already there. Before you choose, everything stays abstract. Ideas stay ideas, plans stay plans, goals stay someday. There's no pressure for your behavior to line up yet because nothing has been named. Once you choose, once you say, this is the direction I'm moving in, life starts asking a different kind of question. Not what do you want, but how are you actually showing up? And that's when things that used to blend into the background become impossible to ignore. The habits you rely on when you're tired, the ways you avoid when things feel uncomfortable, the patterns you have with money, time, and follow through. Not because choosing created them, but because choosing gave them contrast. When there's no direction, almost anything can be justified. You can explain it away, you can rationalize it, you can tell yourself you'll deal with it later. But when there is direction, later becomes now. Choosing doesn't make life harder. It removes the fog. And often, what feels uncomfortable in that clarity isn't the choice itself. It's seeing yourself without the buffer of possibility. That's not failure, that's information. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. Since choosing a direction, what behaviors or patterns have become harder to ignore? And the affirmation for this question is, clarity doesn't punish me. It shows me where growth is asking to happen. There's a moment that happens for a lot of people after they choose a direction. It doesn't happen before the decision, it happens after. You decide, you commit, you say, this is what I'm doing. And then suddenly your mind starts scanning. You replay the decision, you look for flaws, you imagine alternate outcomes, you wonder if there was a better option you missed. This is the part people don't expect because we're taught that doubt means you weren't clear. But a lot of the time, second guessing isn't confusion. It's exposure. Before you choose, everything is hypothetical. You can hold multiple identities at once. You can imagine multiple futures without being accountable to any of them. But once you choose, you're no longer hiding behind possibilities. There's something real at stake now. Second guessing shows up because choosing removes your exit ramps. It asks you to stand somewhere. And standing somewhere means being seen by yourself. This is especially true if you grew up needing to stay adaptable. When adaptability was survival, rescanning made sense. Looking for danger made sense. Questioning every move made sense. So when you choose now, your system doesn't say, great, let's relax. It says, okay, let's make sure this doesn't go wrong. That does not mean you lost clarity. It means you crossed from thinking into responsibility. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. When you start second guessing yourself, what are you actually afraid of losing? Safety, control, or the option to change your mind? And the affirmation for this question is, doubt doesn't mean I chose wrong. It means I chose something that matters. There's another expectation we don't talk about enough. We expect choosing to feel motivating. We expect it to feel exciting, and we expect a sense of relief. But for a lot of people, choosing feels flat or heavy or anticlimactic. And that can be confusing because we're used to adrenaline. We're used to urgency. We're used to movement driven by pressure. Choosing removes that. When you choose a direction, you're no longer running on reaction. And without reaction, there's no immediate rush. What replaces it is responsibility, repetition, maintenance, showing up again tomorrow. That's why choosing can feel boring at first. Not because it's wrong, but because it's no longer feeding your nervous system chaos. Choosing doesn't give you a dopamine hit. It gives you a structure. And structure asks for consistency, not excitement. This is where a lot of people assume they've made the wrong choice because it doesn't feel like what they expected. But feeling neutral after choosing is often a sign that you've moved out of survival mode and into something steadier. Not easier, steadier. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. After choosing, do you look for motivation or do you allow steadiness to be enough? And the affirmation for this question is, I don't need excitement to stay committed. I can build from steadiness. Here's the part that almost never gets said out loud. Choosing a direction doesn't solve your life. It organizes it. And organization is uncomfortable at first. When everything is open, you can explain anything away. When you say you're still figuring it out, you can delay without confronting patterns. When you choose, your life gets a shape, and that shape makes certain things obvious. What you avoid, where you procrastinate, what you keep putting off, what doesn't actually align anymore. Choosing doesn't make you feel instantly confident. It makes you accountable to yourself. That's why choosing feels personal, because it's not about potential. It's about behavior. And behavior tells the truth faster than intentions ever could. Most people aren't afraid of choosing. They're afraid of choosing what will reveal about how they live. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. What has become harder to ignore since you chose a direction? And the affirmation for this question is, choosing direction helps me see myself clearly, not to judge, but to grow. Now, this is where everything connects. Money patterns don't fully show up until there's a direction. Consistency doesn't get tested until commitment exists. Before you choose, money stays abstract. Budgets are ideas, savings are intentions, stability is theoretical. But after you choose, after you say, this is the life I'm building, money becomes practical. It starts asking real questions. How do you spend when no one is watching? What do you avoid looking at? Where do you get inconsistent when things get boring? The same is true for habits and routines. Consistency isn't challenged by chaos, it's challenged by normal days. And choosing a direction creates more normal days. That's why people think money is the problem or discipline is a problem, when really, direction just removed the distractions. It didn't create the patterns, it revealed them. And that's not a setback, that's starting point for real change. I have the last journal prompt here for you guys. What patterns around money or consistency feel clearer now that you've chosen direction? And the affirmation for this question is, seeing my patterns is not failure. It's information I can work with. Now let's get into our prayer. Take a deep breath and put your hand on your chest. Dear God, thank you for the clarity I already have and the direction I've chosen. Help me not panic when things feel heavier than I expected. Help me not doubt myself just because choosing revealed more than I imagined. Give me steadiness instead of urgency, honesty instead of avoidance, and patience with the parts of me that are still learning how to show up. Let me build a life that doesn't require chaos to feel alive. Let my direction be supported by wisdom, not fear. Amen. If choosing feels harder than you thought it would, that doesn't mean you chose wrong. It means you chose something real. Direction doesn't remove struggle. It gives you a place to stand while you work through it. In the next episode, we're going to bring this conversation directly into money and talk about why fear shows up once things are getting organized. And after that, we'll talk about consistency, not as motivation, but as trust with yourself. If this episode helped you name something, take a moment to sit with it. You don't need to fix anything tonight. Awareness is already movement. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok on @unfill and unapologetic pod. And if journaling helps you process these conversations, I have blank journals for sale on Amazon, linked in the show notes, to help you get things out of your head and onto the page. Also, if you want to make a monthly contribution via Buzzsprout, the link is also in the show notes. As always, thank you for being here and for listening honestly, and for choosing a life that's steadier than survival. I'll see you in the next episode.